G'day you mob, how's it going? Welcome to this episode of Pete vs. Plants. I am Pete and the plants are behind me. Today I'm going to give you a bit of a tour of how I have the shelves set up, on which I have hundreds of plants. Some are very, very cheap plants that I have, a close affection with, or two. And the other ones are my investment plants that I'm trying to sort of propagate out and then use to sell and make a bit of an income. So yeah, I'm going to do this one from behind the camera and hopefully show you how to set this up yourself if you want something like this taking over your house. All right, so let's start over here, and I will go through each of these plants in a different video at some point. But effectively, I have these 5-tier racks that I have gotten from Bunnings, and I'm sorry if these lights are going to flicker. It's the LED lights here that seem to do that. So these are just, I'm not sure if they're even stainless steel. I think they might even just be coated with a paint and be steel underneath. They're pretty lightweight, but I like them because they have the metal sort of mesh or grid shelving, which allows light to go through. And yeah, there's 5 different tiers to them. So you can kind of use the top or the very bottom for storage, and then put plants on the other 3 or 4 tiers as you desire. They kind of lock in place with these little rubber or plastic inserts that go in here. And what you can do, you can probably see here, there's 2 halves and they kind of clip on and use these grooves to sit in place. And what you can do is just push this, you could push this up if there were no plants on it, and there's one on each of these corners. And then you can pull these plastic inserts out and adjust the height so that you can easily move these shelves up and down. And so you'll see, I think 1, 2, and 3 all have shelves at the same level. I think I constructed these all next to one another and made sure they were sort of evenly spaced apart the whole way down. But you'll see this one over here, the bottom level here, and the next one up are actually a little bit higher because I have sort of compressed these 2 down next to one another, and they actually have 2 lights here so that the bottom level here is actually getting a little bit of extra light. So they're the shelving units. I think these are about $128 if I remember correctly from Bunnings. They were only sourceable from a single Bunnings store where I live, and there's about 4 here around Geelong, so I had to sort of find them online and then work out which store they were at, and I ended up buying 4 of them, sort of one by one, and then eventually ended up with 4. So that's how the shelves work. I have them sitting sort of adjacent to the window now, because originally I had them sort of flush with the window, but I noticed, one, a shitload of the light was going out of the house and coming back into the house, sort of just lighting up the rest of the house here. Sorry, I'm moving the camera around a bit too much. And I felt like I was wasting a bunch of space. So what I ended up doing was turning the shelves perpendicular to the window, to the wall, and placing plants between the shelves like this. Originally, there weren't as many on the floor, so that I could actually get in there and then more easily access everything that was on the shelves. But as I have propagated things and bought new plants and plants have grown, they have kind of taken over a lot of the space here between the shelving units. And I also have some plants hanging down here. So yeah, I have also set it up so that each of the shelves has access to a west-facing window here, so that a bit of extra light comes through during the day, sometimes direct light in the afternoon. And I have to kind of be aware if it's a really sunny day. Today it's overcast, which is perfect because the light's filtered. But if it's a really sunny day, I'll bring these curtains down. And if I don't want to do that, an option is to put these curtains up, sheer curtains up. So this allows light through, and you can use little plastic, what are they called again? They're kind of like little plier things that grip on. And you can just grip them onto the bottom of the blind here and then raise them or lower them or just leave them sitting there at the top. And then you can leave them open at all times to allow extra light through. So yeah, that's sort of the how and the why of the shelves. And I guess too, I should mention that I have fans on, I think at least 2 of them. So I have one here facing inwards. I've got two smaller fans between each of the pairs of shelves. These were, I think, $13 from a local supermarket, and they're just USB ones, which is really cool. They just plug into the strip over here. This is to kill fungus gnats. It's an insecticide little thing that I change every few weeks. These fans were on half price, I think, for $17 from a hydroponics store, and I just have them going at all times. I kind of have them angled so that they're not shooting down directly on soil, so that they're sort of going this way and that all these pots are getting hit sideways. If this was a bit higher and it was going down onto the soil, it actually ends up evaporating all of the water out of the soil really quickly, and you kind of have to keep an eye on things and make sure that the soil doesn't dry out too quickly. So yeah, one fan on the end there. There's another one down here, which I think is on its way out because it's spinning a little slowly. Sorry about the flashing there, but it is it's going a little slower than the others, I think. So that's sitting there, same sort of thing. It's going above the plants. I try not to have it aiming down at the plants. You can see two more of these little fans here. And the good thing about these ones is I found they're very quiet. So I just have these going 24/7 and you can barely hear them. Now, humidity wise, I keep things at about 60% or to 70%, sort of give or take. And I have this humidifier that's just on auto. So I've got the humidistat, whatever it is down there, set to, I think, 65. And it just keeps pumping out, humidity, I guess steam, humid air, until it reaches about 65%, I guess, on the machine there. So it may actually end up a little less further away from it. And yeah, I found that most of the plants seem to enjoy that humidity. It's not uncomfortable at all for us. And at the moment, it hasn't really had to do much because, I don't know, yeah, it's been raining so much that every time it rains, the humidity is like 70 to 80% anyway. So a lot of the time, this thing is actually off and not doing anything. So yeah, what else can I tell you about the shelf setup here? I have some of the less important plants, the ones that I was originally buying to hopefully do experiments with, just some of the sort of, quote unquote, more boring pothos or epipremnum and philodendrons up here. So these are just sort of growing away. They seem to be doing okay with some of the lights above and the sunlight out here, though I do forget about them, as you can see from time to time, and they get a little crispy. Here are some of the hanging baskets with the ones that can handle more direct light, sort of closer to the window. And yeah, I guess the other thing to mention is I have prop boxes on the shelves sort of all over the place. So there's one down here with a bunch of things in it. There are a few more down here, and I also have propagations with like moss in bags at the back there, sitting on top of these things because they don't need too much light, they need a bit, but it's okay if you block out a little bit, I've found. And then I have up the top here, some of these sort of containers. So I bought these originally to just see if I could actually put plants in them sort of like this to be able to just more easily take them all off and have a look at them. But I found it's a bit of a pain in the butt, and I haven't been able to find anything that really takes up all the space well. So I have used it for these smaller plants here, but I haven't been able to do anything for these bigger ones. I find it easier to just sort of have them sitting on their little trays, and I can move them around easily like that. These are my tissue culture plants. So I have, it's probably about $2,500 worth of plants in here of different things. So I'll give you a proper tour of this at some point, but they're doing well. I have this kind of propped open to let a bit of air in there. The humidity is probably about 80 to 90%. And I'm just letting things go until they grow out, push out a few leaves each. And then the plan is to keep a whole bunch and then sell the rest. So I got these through a friend, Sumac. I think I've mentioned him a few times on the channel before, but he and I are planning on importing a bunch of things from Thailand and China in tissue culture, growing them out and then selling them on the market here in Australia. So that's just a way that I've sort of diversified the different investments that I have. So I've got tissue culture here, and then I've got a whole bunch of things like these elbow cuttings that you would just see all over the place, growing. So different kinds of variegated monstera, This is a mint here, Thai Constellation, Aurea, large form Aurea. Again, I'll give you a tour at another point in the future. So I think that's kind of all there really is to it, guys, for now. But yeah, oh, I have this barrier. So this is a kid's fence barrier. I guess it's for sort of protecting things, but also potentially fencing your kids in. We were using this in the previous house originally for my two kids when they were crawling around, and for my daughter when she was sort of only just walking, to keep them sort of locked in a second playroom that we had. But when we moved into this house didn't have one, and I had already kind of sequestered about 50% of this in the old house to take care of two of these different shelves. So I ended up it ended up fitting perfectly, the entire lot. And you'll see, I just have it sitting here kind of, you know, it's not attached to anything. It just sits upright like this. And I've used masking tape to keep these two pieces together because I actually ran out of the joiners, annoyingly. But it's done a good job so far of just keeping the kids on this side of the fence. And we recently got a cat, and it's done a pretty good job as well of keeping the cat out of there. But you can see that this is probably not going to be for everyone. It has taken over about a third of the lounge room here. In fact, if I zoom out, and again, sorry for the mess, I have small children, guys, deal with it. Yeah, you'll see that it's taken over about a third of the living space, which is the only way that I can justify this is because many of these plants are investment plants, and I'm hoping that it will end up paying its rent. So anyway, that's about it, guys. Guys, Editor Pete here, and I just realized that I forgot to tell you about the lights. So these are 60 centimeter, 20 watt lights, LEDs that I got from eBay. I will show you the ad online. I believe they're in stock. So if you're in Australia and you want these, grab them. They're kind of daisy chained together using these cords, which does sort of limits to some degree the height or between these shelves. But yeah, they've been really good so far, to be honest. Not a single one is broken. I've grabbed 4 sets, 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I have a 5th hiding in my office. And yeah, they light the place up amazingly. So I have these running for probably, I think about 16 hours a day. I think they come on at about 7 a.m. and go off at about midnight, give or take. I'm not sure. Anyway, so that's the current setup. Lastly, I should add that everything is kind of connected up just using some of these power strips. So again, they're sort of just daisy chained together all the way down the back to the power point in the wall. And I have them, yeah, usually away from the shelves so that if anything with water falls over, hopefully it will not get anywhere near these power strips. And that's why as well I try and have anything with water and semi-hydro in containers like this if possible. If you have any questions that you would like me to answer about the setup I have here, feel free to ask them in the comments below. I know that this is definitely not for everyone, and hopefully what I can give you out of this is just the setup of the different components in here, and hopefully get you thinking about how you could potentially have a setup like this in your house, whether or not it's in the lounge room, you know, whether it's in a spare bedroom, in the garage, in a grow tent, whatever it is. Ideally, this is just what I've found has worked really well, having these kinds of shelves, having the fans that I have found that are very cheap, and then being able to put plants on them and stack them and move them around easily as they grow, and also change the level of the shelving as plants grow. You'll see behind me here, there's a billietier there, right? And it's starting to really size up. So I think I'm gonna have to either drop that shelf down or move it around, maybe put it on the shelf right down the back there on the bottom where there's more space. But yeah, it's easy to adjust, they're easy to move, they're lightweight. The only thing that I would mention, and I'll see if I can find where it has happened, is that I have the humidifier way too close to one of the shelves and it started rusting. So I think if you're going to get these shelves and you're worried about it, or they're in a tent or some kind of greenhouse or environment where it is really, really humid and the humidifier is potentially pushing all that humid air straight onto them, see if you can find powder coated ones that aren't going to rust. Okay, so here is what I was talking about. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I think if you were to allow this to continue within a few years, you'd probably run into issues, though because these are so cheap and affordable, maybe it's not too big a deal, you just replace it. The other thing is too, I've noticed that fan originally was right next to that humidifier, and so the front of it has also rusted quite a bit, but I think it'll be fine. And I have just tried to make sure that the humidifier now is kind of pointing straight up and not pointing directly onto anything metal, if that makes sense. Though you can see that a little bit is kind of moving around here and that there is a little bit of rust forming along here. So there you go, guys. That's my current setup here in the lounge room. Hopefully you found this interesting, and yeah, YouTube reckons you're going to enjoy this video next. I hope to see you there. Tooroo.